Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on ArtistFirst Radio. All past shows are available in podcast form. You can pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Use the email address dj@artistfirst.com. And now here they are. We call them Michael and Margaret Lyons.
That's right. That's funny. That's what we call ourselves. It's such an echo lead. Thank you, Scott. And we are the people who are formerly known as the wise ones, but no longer. Oh no. We eschewed that label because we're not wise. We're just mildly kind of. I don't know what we are. Anyway, hi.
We're here.
I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
Margaret, and you people are you people. And tonight we are going to talk about violence. And not in the way that we've all perhaps seen too much of lately, but the concept of violence, and not the concept, but the thing about any kind of violence is it strikes deep into the heart. If you're not a psychopath, witnessing an act of violence is disturbing, and that's a good thing. I think all of us would agree that when people are being hurt under any circumstances, it should bother us. But what we wanted to do was kind of get down to the nub of that whole thing. Is why? Why does it bother us? What is it in you that makes you feel the pain that you see in another, and that other may not be even physically close to you. You may be able to see violence done on another human being from another era. You may read about it in a book or a story. You may, the connection of witnessing a violent act, which is not necessarily in any way going to affect you, yet it does affect you, is a uniquely human thing. And in that human beings also have the ability to anthropomorphize many things. People can also witness violence against non-human things and feel wronged, or they feel a sense of pain. And that, to the extent that you feel that pain, it's not only viscerally we think that yes, we can feel this pain, but in fact there is empirical evidence, neuroscience, which supports this, that people witnessing others, witnessing an act of violence, the pain that you feel is a true activation of the same parts of the brain that experience suffering if you're physically being, assaulted. So it's true physical reaction as well as a spiritual and a psychological reaction.
When we see violence, and I mean really see it, your heart, it just opens, and your response is no. No. And when you see a blow being delivered to someone who is defenseless, everything inside of you just screams. And analyze that response. When you see this image, analyze that response. Your first reaction is that this must stop. Help the individual that is being hurt. What can be done? But your heart, your initial reaction is you just want to go and participate. Just no, no, no. Complete rejection. Everything in you goes unacceptable.
There's an outrage. There's a
This is not right. That is the cry internally that comes up. This is not right.
well, and let's stop right there for a second. What do we mean by that? Is that there's a moral outrage. So
This is what we have given the name of. In other words, this feeling comes, and we call it moral outrage. It is an absolute natural response. People don't seem to understand, because people say, oh, moral outrage, and it's just words, really. It's like, oh, well, something wrong was done, so we've got to rectify. It's like, no, you don't understand. That phrase rose out of you when you witness something that is not right.
well, you're right. You're exactly right. So the term moral outrage is something we put on top of, or we've used as language for something which is well below language.
Yes.
The experience that we're talking about, which we call moral outrage or righteous anger and all the other things that we put on top of it, all the words, comes from a much deeper place. The built into our neurological structure, into our DNA, is the ability to, this is the word that people get confused by. It's the ability to sympathize, and it's not sympathy. It means that you identify with the other, and there are various levels of identification. But
right.
In violence, the identification is visceral. It is unbidden. It is instant. It's a punch in the gut. It chills up your spine.
It's true empathy at that point, as opposed to sympathy.
I think both words are applicable. Listen, both words are applicable, but both are wrong in different ways. Really, these are all words that we put on top of something which is at a spine, nerve, neurological, spirit, heart level. And we put all these words on top of it: moral outrage, empathy, sympathy. The idea of feeling their pain, which has been overused to the point of almost meaning nothing. But all this grows out of this human connection, which is always there, but under moments of high stress, under moments where you witness grievous injury, or in some cases, bodily harm to the point of death, you feel it as though it was being done to you. And this is important because it is the trigger for the reaction to defend. The same trigger comes up when you yourself are assaulted, and it goes to our ability to connect with each other on a more than physical level. When a human being witnesses something that it identifies as another human being injured or having violence worked upon them, there is an immediate, we call it a moral outrage. There's an immediate connection at the highest level. You are them right at that moment. That's why people run into burning buildings. That's why people throw themselves into raging waters to save another. It's also why people are instantaneously, it's what you just said, instantaneously scream at a level at the base of the brain, no, and they want to immediately do something about it. These are fundamental principles of humanity that we have covered up in a lot of things, and they underlie many things. They underlie, a large portion of how we interact with each other, how we deal with disputes and so on. But the basic connection is that what happens to you is as important to me as it is to you. What happens to the other is an attack on me, because at that moment, you're my tribe, you're my family, you're me being, and your life is as precious to you as it is to me. Your life's being put into danger or being put into grievous bodily harm affects me at the same level. It's an existential threat. And the bond is so strong and so instantaneous that you're outraged and ready to attack before you even know it.
Right. Your body response is there. And that's where your own internal training has to kick in. How do you choose to respond to suddenly this huge spike in response and energy? And it's interesting. It really is interesting, because most people connect it to a fight or flight syndrome. That's how we've been programmed physically, but internally, when a person sees this, their initial reaction is it's a deep sadness, like it's so empty, and that you can't even put a word to it. The vastness of that, and your response is no, that should not be.
Right.
And when you're down in that emptiness, that lack, that darkness is so dark down in that space, your first reaction is, I don't want to be here. So you choose something a little higher up with a little more energy, and it's usually anger.
I want to stay there for a moment, though. You're right. That reaction brings you down to your core, to your base. If you're talking energetically, it's at the survival chakra. It's at the very base. It's dark. And anger is the next one up. It's to fight back. So, but these connections are who we are at that level. Each one of these connections has existential power. The heart connection also has existential power. When you get thrust into survival, like you said, it's fight or flight. You can be thrust there even when you physically are not being assaulted by this same connection, this parity between you and the other.
Parity, P-A-R-I-T-Y.
Yes. What did I say?
No, because parity always sounds like parody. That's why I'm making the distinction.
Yes, not. By parity, it means it's the same root word as pair. You are one with that person. You are twinned with them. You are paired with them. You are them. They are you.
Right. It's not a mockery.
No. So the twinning of your soul with the other is at that level. And then the part I wanted to get to was, once you're there, you go up, and you go up into an anger level. But through the many thousands and thousands of years of civilization, we go into a different mode. We go into a mode of judgment. There is the instantaneous reaction. There's the blossom of anger, and then there's something that we start to do with that particular energy, which is to judge. And the judgment usually is, when you see somebody who's being assaulted, that's not right. That's the judgment. This is wrong. It's truly the basis of all the moral imperatives. The judgment is right or wrong. Initially, survival doesn't have a judgment. It just is survive.
Right.
Then anger is just anger. But then you get to judgment. This is not right. And then you then you have the volitional act. I will do something to help the other. I will make this. I will commit. And this commitment is so total that you will commit your life instantaneously without thought to a cause which looks as though you will lose your life in it, running into a burning building. Existential threat becomes immaterial because you judge that it's so important that this not be let go, that this is an injustice. This must be righted, and I must right it. And you commit your life at that moment, your spark, to righting that wrong. So,
or trying to.
Oh, and failing is all part of the equation, but
you
don't care about that. There's no trying. There's truly no.
You're assuming, of course, that you've actually chosen a viable pathway.
I would say this. I would say that at the moment that you choose, you don't care whether it's viable or not. That's later. That's a consequence.
Viable. What I mean by viable is it capable of sustaining life
for the other? You mean
for life? Because when you realize the interconnection, you realize that you are serving life. You're not serving you, and it has the appearance of serving the other, but what you're serving is life.
I see. Correct. Your personal identity is actually currently not foremost. It is that you become in the service of life without regard to whether you survive or not, or even the other survives. You transcend your identity into something much larger and greater, which is more true.
It's life, and when the spark of life there is an attempt to snuff it out, and you take it personal.
Exactly. Take it personally.
Okay, so that recognition needs to be acknowledged for every single person. What you're actually fighting for is the spark of life, and how precious that truly is. It's only in those instances that your body actually sits there and goes, no, because it realizes how valuable, how everything in you puts that spark at the top of importance, at the apex of what you hold as valuable, as precious, as sweet.
But I would postulate that the I is gone at that point. In other words, in that instant, there's no I or other. There is just this. There is something greater than both, to which you become an agent.
Well, that's when you become a building block to the greater experience that life is.
Yes, I think we're saying the same thing, but later, afterwards, in some of these instances, you'll have this existential threat. You'll have people that act in the moment, and then there's an aftermath, and they'll say, well, why did you do it? And they can never explain why. Really, the most explanation you get is no, I was there, I had to do it. Anyone would have done the same, is the other phrase you hear. And both those things are exactly true, because in that instant of time, the I and the other are gone. And it's, as you said, it's life. It's something greater. It's the spark. And to the extent that you can defend that spark in the other, you don't care about your individual existence anymore. Both things become one. Your existence is as important as the existence of the other in that instant. And you are there. You also, this is just an aside, but each of us knows when the moment comes when you are called to act. It's not something you'll get a big message. You know it at a level which is well below your personal existence or mental ego concept. You just know it, and you have to do it. This isn't to say you're an automaton, because people can refuse, but you feel wounded in refusing it, because you're like, I was there. I should have done that. That was more important than me. I
would ask, if you truly feel that spark, where your heart is completely open and that has dissolved, your identity has dissolved, okay, I would say that you would never say no to doing something. The only reason you say no is because you haven't reached that point. Your ego has asserted itself again. And suddenly, because of your ego, you're saying no, as opposed to if you're identified with the spark of life that is beyond boundaries, you will always take a step in the direction of life.
I agree. I think that there is, I believe, a volition to exceed yourself, but in that state you don't go back. But there is a moment when you can choose to not do it, but you remain in the ego state. You don't go there. Now, maybe we'll talk about this in the second half, but the consequences of this, and let's just go back to the beginning. We see an act of violence. It evokes in us this reaction at the survival level. It comes up into anger. It comes up into judgment. No, this is wrong. And we go beyond ourselves and into the act of doing something about it, But there is certainly, from another observer's point of view, an equally violent act which may be being done in defense. Because let's just make it as one person. When you are assaulted by something with the intent to kill you, you will fight back with the same intensity to perhaps kill them. And there's another judgment here, and the other judgment here, we can talk about it in the second half hour maybe a little bit, is that the initial assault, we feel at that level, it's wrong. But the defense of life, no matter how violent the defense may be, we feel is correct, because there is another judgment that life is so precious that one who acts to deprive another of life is justly. It is just to fight it back against them as with the same intensity. So, just to make it as an example, someone attempts to murder another person, and the murderer, is killed by that person in defense of their life. We say that's a just act of violence because the intent is important, or the instigator is important to this whole equation. Similarly, if we witness an act of violence and we become that person who is now going to defend, in defense of another, you may commit an act of violence which causes the initial perpetrator to lose their life, a very violent act. We would also say that that's not wrong. In fact, it's correct. It's right. So what I'm trying to say is that the act, the violence of the act, whether it's always existential, and it's always going to end up in anger or huge amounts of energy. However, when we say it's wrong, it's because this act was with intent to do something wrong, to take from another. And when we say it's right, we say this act, no matter how violent, was in defense of another. So there's this very interesting pivot.
If you break it down, it becomes right. It is right when you are saving a life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So when you see it and something is trying to take a life and you say, no, that's not right. But you see someone else coming in to save a life. Everything in you says, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And your compass is eternal.
Mm.
It understands that life itself needs to be protected and to be nurtured. And it's understanding that everything is based on whether or not life itself is being honored.
Mm.
So to another person saying that, taking of a life is right, this is where you go into the making of all the laws in the books right now.
Mm. And the nuance thereof.
Right. Because it is not so simple.
No. And the crux of the matter, I believe, or the kind of the determining point, there's two things. As you said, it's never so simple because a large portion of it depends on perception. But given that your perception is all you have, the basic energy flow, the trigger at the existential level and blossoming into anger and judging that something is not right will happen based on your perception. The use of your energy in countering violence may to another look like violence. So the law, or the way that we sort these things out, is by the very important article of intent.
Right.
And I intend now to go back to the studio, and you guys can think about this, and we're going to come back, and there's going to be a test.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lines is book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time. The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the fourth Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, on ArtistFirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
Listening to The Soul of the Everyman on Artist First World Radio. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
All right, now everyone take out your papers and pencils, and this will be an open book test, but unfortunately there's no book. Anyway, so tonight we're talking about violence. but I think what we're really talking about at the end of the day is the energy of life, of existence, of the spark that connects us all. And where we ended, just to refresh on the last half hour, was that an act of violence is in and of itself, just to say the act of violence in and of itself can be right or wrong. The clear prime mover, the intent, is incredibly important. And there's language always informs, Marcus. When we also have a term called senseless violence.
Yes.
And what we mean by that is it is also wrong to act in violence with no intent, just violence. Violence for violence sake is also wrong. So it isn't a zero-sum game. If you have no intent whatsoever and you act violently, it's still wrong. However, it is correct to say, it is very, very important to say that violence done in defense of your existence or the existence of another is universally thought of as right.
Yes.
And that basic principle comes down to that your life to you is more precious than anything else, period. And so the defense of your life through whatever means you have is inherently right at a moral level. And the key word is defense. If you act with intent to harm or to kill or to deprive one another of their life, we almost universally say that is wrong, because the intent is to put your desire above that of the life of another.
It's okay.
So we almost universally say that that is wrong. Yet that same act, let's just say it's a violent act with a firearm. That same act of discharging a firearm in defense of your life, we almost universally say that that's correct. So Margaret mentioned it last half hour. A great deal of what we call the law is based on intent. It's based on what was your intent in committing the particular act that was committed.
Right.
What's up, man?
No. It's all right. It's a bee.
There's a bee in the studio, and we're about to do some violence on him.
No, I'm trying to coax him to go out, go to the light.
So, go to the light. In the Soul of the Everyman, we only condone violence against non-human insects with stingers.
No, he's going to find his way out. All right. Sorry, guys.
Sorry. But so I want to refer back. I'm not sure if this is up onto the website yet, but we had an interesting quote that we were going to kind of put up there, and we found a few. We found a few quotes that were dealing with violence, but none of them sort of captured the key feeling that we were talking about here. This one is more along the lines of the connection. And what it really comes down to is the moment when you witness violence, the moment that you can actually feel the pain in your chest, and chest is always a euphemism for the heart, for the core, from seeing or hearing something that literally breaks your heart. And we've been talking a lot about physical violence, but as human beings, we understand that violence comes in many forms. There is violence done to another in a psychological way. Violence which is abuse at a level of either physical or mental.
Right. I think you should read the whole quote. You only stopped in the middle.
I'll let you finish it. I thought that was the end. Sorry. The screen is too small. You go ahead.
Okay.
I read the whole thing. That moment when you can actually feel the pain in your chest from seeing or hearing something that breaks your heart.
It breaks your heart.
I didn't say breaks your heart. I thought I did.
Maybe you did.
You know what? But it bears repeating, because the heart, again, the heart is, as we often say, if you want truth, especially truth when it comes to, perception, the heart is your truth seer, your truth detector. The mental aspect, the mind, the ego, Margaret, can excuse anything.
Well, the truth is, when you are in that type of pain, you are looking for a way to get out of that pain. And your brain, basically your mind, your mental aspect wants you to pay attention to it. So it'll give you all these reasons so that it tells you that, you don't have to feel the pain, you just do this. I've analyzed the situation. If you go this way, then that's how you avoid that pain.
Well, I would say what I was talking about particularly was that the mental aspect can literally excuse the most heinous acts of violence. And we've seen it time and time again where societies or governments or even organizations will act or condone the most heinous types of violence and as long as this is where oftentimes the law, even though it should be based on these universal precepts, defense of life and so on, oftentimes the law is used to to justify at a mental level designating a particular person or group as less than human,
Right.
and then that particular person or group can have any amount of violence
Done to that person.
done to them, and without regard for their humanity, and at the heart, visceral, spark level, we know it's wrong. The evidence that was uncovered in the gulags or in the concentration camps sickened every person. You could mentally talk yourself out of it. That's how it happened. But at the level of humanity, it was universally condemned as wrong. And
well, if you had the experience of opening the concentration camp and seeing the result of the act of trying to exterminate a whole group of people, it was sickening. People, the American soldiers that went in and opened those camps, literally a number of them were just throwing up.
yes, and these were, to put a fine point on it, these were men who had fought for months and years in some of the bloodiest battles and exchanges. They had been wreaking heinous violence themselves all the way because they were engaged in battle at the level of existential battle. But yet this was instantly recognized as both wrong and an offense against their humanity.
Yes.
They knew nothing about these people except that they were being treated in a way that was de facto, that was a priori wrong.
And that has been a going thing since the beginning of civilization.
Yes.
Okay, let's acknowledge that. Okay, it's not just that it happened here or there. It's across the board. And,
oh yeah.
And we want to say we pride ourselves on being a civilized society, but everything around you is telling you that is a very thin line.
Oh yes.
Very thin, and people are only too glad to separate other people out and then want to condemn them. And if they have an opportunity, the amount of hate that you see, you realize that person would only too gladly take the life of the person they hate.
But your point is exactly right. This is a human condition. You can pick examples from every age, the Romans, the Greeks, every age, all across the world. This is a human condition. And also the recognition of the basic right of life to live, to exist, and the existential spark connection is down at our existence creation level. It's a human thing. The mental machinations which are used to justify violence against a group are always convoluted because they have to get past that. They have to get the ego to deny the truth. And even then, why these particular, even though in small they succeed for a period of time, why these particular types of injustices always fail is because at the human heart level, the outrage grows until it cannot be contained any longer. The outrage against these offenses grows in even the hearts of those who perpetrate them.
I would turn that, flip it, and basically say that these acts are inviolable, and it winds up killing itself.
Yes. They're not non-viable. Exactly. They can't live. They can't exist.
They have to suck on life, take life from other places for them to exist.
Yes.
Left to their own devices, they die.
They die.
So there is why this mental machination goes on. Convince you that they need your support in some way to say that, they can continue doing that.
Right. So, at at their heart, at the heart of this whole issue is the preciousness, the uniqueness of life, of the spark. The spark is what also connects us all. It's what gives us the ability to feel the other as though they were us. It also gives us the rage, the outrage, the anger, the blossom, and it also gives us the judgment to say this is wrong, and then to act, to maybe in using the same, almost the exact same actions as far as their violence and their effect to defend that which is precious. So it's an interesting circle, like many things in life. It's an interesting parallel. The violence which is senseless, or violence which is driven by ego and by the
darkness.
By darkness, by the designation of the other as not deserving life. This darkness is fought with the same weapons, with the same energies that it uses to wreak its evil, but yet we understand, because we understand the two parts. We understand where the evil comes from, the intent, and we understand where the defense, though it may be exactly as violent as the way in which the intent is wreaked, the evil intent is wreaked, is correct. Because at the center, in between those two, where everything happens, is the true bright line of life, the spark, the preciousness of it. There's another, just another side. When people lack this spark, or rather they lack this ability, there are people in the world, we call them psychopaths, who have a physical issue, an actual neurological issue, if they're true psychopaths, where they cannot feel, or they are prevented in some way from feeling the connection to other. This is a terrible physiological defect.
Right.
It's truly in their neurological systems. There's a true physiological defect. There's a lack of a particular system in the brain. But these people are almost viscerally felt. If you come into contact with someone who is a psychopath, they may act and look and have all the characteristics of everybody else you meet, but there's something at a very low level, at the heart or at the nerve level, that you feel there's a problem here. There's a disconnect, and
a dissonance.
There's a true dissonance, and there's a true sense of danger. Some of the worst criminals that people know in recent history, and maybe throughout time, have had this unfortunate defect. It's like any defect in your system. It can cause a tremendous amount of wrong because there's no feedback. Part of this is the connection is a feedback. Even when I do something which hurts another, I feel bad. If I'm a person that has any sort of feelings, I feel bad even depriving another of something that they may have wanted. Even if it's important that I do that. As a parent, you often have to deprive children of things that they maybe want at the moment, but you feel bad. Because there's always that sort of, I can understand why you're feeling bad, and we have this dialogue at all levels, not just at existential levels, all levels of society. This is how we function, by knowing what the other is thinking or understanding the other's motivations. When you break that, these people are terribly alone, and they can do terrible, evil things without even understanding why they're wrong because of that lack of connection. It's a great, you could say it's an evolved trait, but it's certainly an incredibly important trait that we do have the connection to spark.
Yes. No, that connection to life is primary, and not having it is very incapacitating. The people who are sociopaths do compensate this. They learn the quote unquote appropriate actions to allow another person to say, "Oh, okay, you're all right," but they actually do not feel that reason for why it's all right.
You said sociopaths, and you're correct with sociopaths. I'm not sure if sociopaths have the same level of defect, but certainly they may have a certain level of that same defect. Psychopaths, though, as they know they've done the fMRIs and so on, they know that there's a lack of a true, obvious neurological
connection.
issue. Yeah.
So, but so it's the psychopaths.
Yeah.
The psychopaths are missing a primary component, a primary tool of being able to connect to humanity in general. It's a physical connection to humanity in general.
Yes. It's interesting you say physical connection, Margaret, because the thing about what we call this connection to spirit, is it's more than physical. There is certainly a physical component. There's a part of their brains which isn't developed, which doesn't allow them to do this. But we know that it's more than that, because you can be in this same state witnessing someone who is not anywhere physically near you, thousands of miles away. You can be affected in the exact same way, witnessing people who are already dead. It's just a historical document. You're looking at a film from 70 years ago. You can feel the same thing. So there's an energy spirit level to this that is trans-time. It is trans-physical. There are physical analogs to all these things. So having this physical damage in this neurological system impairs that ability. But it's certainly far more than just the person next to you, or even close to you, or even your family. It goes well beyond all that. So we are not, we always say it, we're not physical beings. We are spirit incarnate in flesh, and spirit is the connection here.
Well, I think we said this earlier in the program. Maintaining, if you can imagine for a moment where all humanity is able to touch into that life and how precious that life actually is, it becomes apparent at a gut level when you see violence. It's like, no, that permeates through all of you. That connection, if you can maintain that, this is life. Life is there's no words for it. You're at a moment where there are no words.
Yeah.
Because words fall far short. But if we could maintain that connection person to person, then a lot of this madness that we see in the world wouldn't happen.
I agree. And I think I'll say that we have another sort of ability to cut ourselves off, to convince ourselves using ego that this isn't this that we push the connection away. I think at a visceral level we're always connected. At a heart level we're always connected. But I think we, as the ego is very able to do, ignore the heart, push the heart away, concentrate on the I and not the all. And
well, you're trapped in that power relationship. You only see things through power. You don't see it through the other connections that you have in your body. What we were seeing when we were talking about the act of violence, that is at the survival chakra level. So it's just an automatic connection from human to human. And as you go up the chakras, you're supposed to be able to make the connection throughout all these power centers. But if you get stuck at the third chakra, which is power, and the issues of power, that's when you can be eaten alive by the lust for power, because it doesn't generate its own. It's a very singular thing, and life only permeates through the connection. So that's why at the third chakra, it starts commandeering others so that it can be fed.
Parasitically.
Right. And it's horrific at a core level for all humans. When you think of it, you think of a vampire or a leech. Something's blood-sucking, taking my life. No.
Yes. And I think to do that requires an exercise of denial of the heart and a sort of a short circuit to the ego. The power center is, I am more important than all these others who will serve me. It's power over, right?
Yes, it basically loses the connection.
Yeah.
Not understanding that power center is to be utilized to help feed not only your physical body. I mean, that in the East, the third chakra, the hara, is the power center for the body itself. But that analogy has got to go outward, and you must realize that you need to train that energy to be able to help perpetuate the body of humanity. Maintain it, understand what's needed, but not it, and it has nothing to do with that exclusivity. This is a training area, so that when you come up to the heart, your physical aspects are ready. Physical attributes, your all the discipline that you've used can be extended outward to the outward body of humanity.
Right.
A Christed kind of situation.
Yes, and in doing that, you realize, you find a channel for that spark. There's every chakra has a connection to all. And we could go on, but suffice to say that violence in defense of life is quite different than violence in taking of life. And I'm Michael Lyons.
No. And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.